A child walks into fear and asks it to do better. That's the whole turn. He names the accountant everyone trusts. He asks for justice, not blood. The Don hears the plea and finds something he thought he'd buried, a line he won't cross again. From that choice, everything tilts. Numbers become names, allies reveal their price, and a boy who should have been invisible teaches a king how to be seen. What follows isn't clean, but it's honest. And sometimes, that's how cities change. Stories like this deserve to be remembered. Subscribe and share. The chandeliers in Vardano's private dining room threw coins of light across crystal. Men in dark suits wore the glow like armor. Don Lucien Vardano stood at the head of the table, jacket open, hearing without listening. The door at the far end opened, and silence rolled over the room. A boy stepped through. Barefoot, filthy, sleeves torn, he crossed the carpet in careful steps, as if each one cost a promise. His cheek was scored with a drying cut. At the edge of the marble dais, he folded to his knees and pressed his hands together. "Please, sir," he said, voice hoarse but steady. "Arrest my father before he hurts anyone else." No one moved. A knife hovered, then lowered. Lucian felt the room tilt toward the boy. He took 2 steps forward. The child lifted his face. Gray eyes, swollen from tears, held steady, asking a monster for mercy. "What is your name?" Lucian asked. "Noah," the boy said. "Noah Vance." The surname landed like a flare. Vance Lucien's accountant. Neat suits, quiet shoes, obedient numbers. Lucien crouched so his voice would not fall from above like judgment. Up close, the injuries spoke the way ledgers do, patterned, deliberate. "Who is your father, Noah?" "Eric Vance," he whispered. A murmur pushed around the room, then died when Lucian lifted a hand. "Did he do this to you?" The boy's flinch was small but total. He nodded once. "He said if I told," Noah added, "I'd end up like Mom." Heat struck the back of Lucien's neck. He offered the boy a palm. Noah did not take it until Lucien's fingers lowered, patient, unthreatening. "Stand up," Lucian said gently. "You're not under arrest." "I stole," Noah said. He pulled a crushed candy wrapper from his pocket. "For my sister once when we had no breakfast. If I go to jail, they feed you. If you put me there." Lucian measured the faces of his men. Even the cruel ones blinked. The Don looked at the foil and saw a flash he had buried. His mother's locked door, his father's ring against tile, a boy who learned to stop asking. He turned to a waiter. "Bring the kid dinner. The biggest you can carry. And water." As plates moved, Lucian's consigliere, Franco Delaro, slid to his side. "Boss, this is a scene. Let security handle it and we'll send the boy downtown." "We need to listen," Lucian said. Noah ate like hunger was chasing him. Between mouthfuls he spoke in clipped bursts. Nights in a closet, the rule about silence when visitors came, the time his mother argued with Eric about containers at the docks, and then wasn't there in the morning. At containers, 3 captains went still. "Which docks?" Lucian asked. "The ones with the red cranes," Noah said. "Mom said those cranes lift people who never get set down again." Franco leaned closer, cold. "If Vance is dirty, we'll wash it. But this isn't for the dining room. Cops will sniff if you make a show." "Then we'll make a promise instead," Lucian said. He knelt again so the boy didn't have to look up. "Noah, why come to me?" "Dad says no cop can touch him," Noah said. "He says numbers and friends make him invisible. But everyone says you see everything." Lucian had been called many things. God was one, though he'd always thought devils worked harder hours. He studied the flake of blood on the boy's ear and the dirt under his nails, and realized the kid wasn't asking for vengeance. He was trying to put himself in chains so his father would be stopped. Some pleas are plans, some plans, a last idea before dark. He glanced at his lieutenants. Eric Vance, he said, calm as a ledger. I want every company he touches and every shipment he's swabbed. Quiet eyes only. Cairo, the tech with quick hands, nodded and vanished. Noah had slowed, exhaustion overtaking adrenaline. If you arrest me, he said, do I get a last meal? Like in movies? Lucian almost smiled. That's only for people who don't come home again. Where's home? Noah asked. The room held its breath. Lucian turned to Franco. Clear the winter suite. Fresh clothes. Doctor. Franco's jaw ticked. Boss, we're not a charity. No, Lucian said. We're a family. Sometimes we remember. The boy's head wavered. The floor rose to meet him. Lucien caught him before he fell. When Lucien lifted his eyes, half the table watched not the dawn but the child, and in their faces he saw something that frightened him more than police ever had. The chance this moment would change what they expected from their king. Lucien carried Noah into the corridor. You're safe, he said. No one will touch you. Even my dad? Noah whispered. Especially him. They reached the suite. Clean sheets, a couch, warm light. Lucien settled the boy and stepped away only when Noah's breathing deepened. Franco waited at the door. You're buying trouble we can't afford, Franco said. If Vance is dirty, let the law chew him. The law eats what men like Vance season for it, Lucien said. He looked back at the sleeping child. We're done feeding him, Cairo called, as Lucien crossed to the balcony. Got first smoke, shell companies, dummy invoices, shipments through our cranes, patterns line with missing persons no one linked. Lucien looked down at the harbor salted with light, thinking of the boy kneeling beneath the chandelier. Start a burn, he said, quiet, and find me Ilara Vance, dead or breathing. On it. Lucien ended the call and stood with the winter wind. He could step back into warmth and pretend this was an interruption, or he could admit it was the truest thing to happen in years. He opened the door again. In the hush of the suite, Noah stirred, eyes half open. Are you the police? He asked. No, Lucien said, but tonight I'll do. Now. Transition to backstory. Lucien's quiet order triggers the investigation that uncovers Eric's shell companies, human cargo routes, and the first breadcrumb to Ilara's disappearance. If you're enjoying this story, don't forget to subscribe, like the video, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Your support helps us keep these stories alive. And trust me, the best part is yet to come. Now let's get back to it. The suite door clicked shut behind Lucien, leaving the boy asleep in a snow of white sheets and the scent of lemon polish. Down the corridor, the dining room had thawed back into talk, but too carefully. Men like his did not like surprises that breathed. When Lucien re-entered, 2 soldiers were already moving towards the hall with orders of their own. They almost collided with a small figure padding barefoot from the suite, hair flattened on one side, eyes glazed with sleep but stubbornly awake. Noah stopped at the threshold of the dining room and clasped his hands again, like he'd rehearsed the gesture. Sir, he said, voice raw, I need to be arrested now. A low ripple crawled along the table. One of the captains reached for the boy's shoulder. Noah twisted away, small as a sparrow but fast. Lucien raised a palm. No one touches him. Boss, Franco murmured, easing to his side. Let us clear this. It looks like a test, Lucien said, and we're going to pass. He beckoned to the waiter. Bring him a plate. Not a plate. Everything. Steak, pasta, bread, milk, water, soup. If it's hot, carry it. If it's cold, make it colder. The waiter nodded and vanished at a near run. Noah's jaw worked. If you don't arrest me, he'll... His breath shortened. He'll know where to find me. You're under my roof, Lucien said. Your father doesn't come here." A beat of disbelief crossed the boy's face, then a slight, ragged nod. He perched on the edge of a leather chair 10 sizes too big and folded into himself, hands white-knuckled together. The first dish arrived, a bowl of broth with a rim of steam. Noah tried to wait for the spoon. His fingers betrayed him. He lifted the bowl and drank. The room watched the line of his throat, the way his shoulders stayed lifted, braced for a strike that didn't come. Bread landed. He tore it with quick, guilty motions, eyes bouncing to see who would stop him. No one did. By the time the steak hit the table, the boy's hands were shaking so hard the knife scraped china. A soldier reached out instinctively to steady the plate. Noah flinched. The blade clattered. Lucian said, "He helps with plates, kid." Nothing else. He took the knife, cut the meat himself, and pushed the dish back. "Eat," he said softly. "Nobody here is counting your bites." The boy ate like a clock, trying to make up lost minutes. Between mouthfuls, the words began to come, as if chewing turned the gears of speech. "He wasn't always bad," Noah said, eyes fixed on the steak. "When Mom was there, he pretended better. But he'd get calls at night, and we weren't allowed to flush the toilet after 10 because of the noise. He said noise made men come to houses." "What men?" Lucian asked. "The ones from the cranes." He gestured with his fork without looking up. "Red ones. They pick things up at night. You can see them from the bridge if you hide behind the cement wall." No one at the table breathed. Lucian's docks had red cranes. "He'd count cash at the kitchen table and call me Noise," Noah continued. "Mom told him to do that in the study if he had to be mean." He said she was brave for someone so stupid. The boy stopped chewing. His next swallow looked painful. "The night she went away, they shouted about the containers." She said, "They're not numbers, Eric. They're people." He laughed. Not the funny way. The other way. After that night, he said she ran off, but the laundry basket still had her sweater, and Mom doesn't go anywhere without her. He paused, frowning at the word. "Angel. That little silver one. She said it kept us safe." He put the fork down. Maybe it didn't work. Under the table, Lucian's hand closed into a fist. He saw again the broken pendant he'd found in the warehouse, the wing bent back like a wren's. Franco lifted his glass, voice even. "This is tragic." "Truly, but keeping him here invites a storm. The right move is clean and simple. Call social services, pass him to the police, and let the state swallow what it chews." Noah's head snapped up. "No," he said, and it wasn't a child's cry. It was the flat answer of someone who had already run out of doors. "Cops won't help. He owns them." "Everybody thinks that," Franco replied. "They're not all bought." "He gives them envelopes," Noah said. "He takes me to the bench across from the station and tells me to wait and not breathe loud. Then he goes in with a brown envelope and smiles with his mouth and not his eyes. After, he says, 'You see? Everybody needs friends.'" Franco's mouth flattened. "Stories." Lucien turned his head slightly. "Names?" Noah shrugged the smallest shrug. "The one with a thin mustache. Officer on the window whose hands always shake," he considered. "And the one who calls him sir, even when he's sitting." Across the table, a soldier coughed into his fist and whispered to another. Cairo would match descriptions to badge numbers before the soup cooled. Lucian pulled a chair from the end of the table and sat angled toward Noah, lowering the altitude of the conversation. "How many nights like this?" he asked. The boy's eyes moved sideways, counting memory. "A lot." His voice turned papery. "He puts a chair under my doorknob, but it squeaks, so I learned to lift and slide and push it quiet. Sometimes the closet is safer. It smells like the lemon water for the floors." "Who hits you?" Lucian asked, soft as a wing beat. "Dad. Noah said, but not where the teachers can see. He says that's how dumb men get caught. He touched the cut on his cheek, and then drew his hand back, as if the touch itself were disloyal. Today I asked about Mom again. He said if I didn't stop, the cranes would find me. That's when I ran. And you ran to me, Lucian said, almost to himself. I saw your face on a truck once, Noah answered. Not your face, the sign. Vardano. Mom told me that name keeps people safe if you say it the right way. She said some devils hate other devils enough to help angels. His mouth twitched, embarrassed by the rhyme. I thought maybe you were the right way. The room, predators all, looked down at bread plates. Franco spread his hands. Look at us. Is this what we do now? Take care of strays because their fairy tales pick our names? Lucian's eyes didn't leave the boy. Sometimes fairy tales are the most accurate ledgers. He stood. Noah, you're not going to jail. You're going to sleep. And tomorrow you're going to tell me anything else you remember. Anything you think doesn't matter usually does. The boy blinked. If I sleep here, he'll come. He won't get within a block, Lucian said. Franco leaned in, voice pitched for Lucian alone. You can't wall out the state. If the police hear he's on property, then they'll hear it after I move him, Lucian said. We're not tossing a boy into a machine built by the man we're hunting. The waiter returned with a slice of pie glistening under cream. Noah stared as if it were a trick. Lucian slid it closer. A man eats after a hard day, he said. That's a rule I intend to keep. Noah took the smallest forkful, like tasting a color for the first time. There was a hum at Lucian's wrist. He checked the message. Cyro. First ledger scrub. Vance tied to 5 shells. Shipments routed through Red Crane 3. Timestamps 210 to 300 multiple nights. Crossrefs missing persons. Likely trafficking. Pulling cam feeds. A second vibration. Cyro. And boss, there's a gap in last quarter's IRS mirror. Somebody inside helped him stitch it. Not just on his side. Ours. Lucien glanced at Franco, who was watching him watch the phone. Problem? Franco asked lightly. Plenty, Lucian said. He slid the device away, then addressed the table. Hear me. The boy is not a guest. He is under protection. The next man who suggests otherwise cleans the alley with a toothbrush. A few nervous laughs, mostly nods. Noah put his fork down. Are you going to... He swallowed. Are you going to kill my dad? Lucian weighed the truth like a blade. I'm going to stop him, he said. If the law can hold him, the law will. If it can't, I will. But you do not carry what happens, Noah. That's on men who chose wrong a very long time. A tremor worked through the boy's shoulders, some not loosening. Franco lifted his glass again. To men choosing right, he said dryly. Starting tonight. Lucien did not drink. He watched Noah lick the last of the cream from his fork, small and intent. The boy's earlier words looped back, quiet as a warning. Cops won't help. He owns them. If Eric Vance could bend the precinct, he could certainly bend a ledger inside Lucian's world. The rot wasn't just near the Empire, it was threaded through it. Lucian touched the back of the boy's chair with 2 fingers, the way a father might, though he had never learned how. Enough for now, he said. Cyro will bring clothes. A doctor will look at your cheek. Noah hesitated. Am I... He searched for the right crime. Am I in trouble for begging? Lucien's answer was slow, deliberate. You did the bravest thing a person can do. You told the truth to someone who could hurt you. Where I come from, that's the opposite of trouble. Noah's mouth tucked into a small, tired smile. He nodded once, as if committing the rule to memory, then let Lucian's men, carefully, palms visible, steps gentle, guide him back toward the suite. Franco watched them go. You're going to burn a lot of good wood for that spark, he said. Lucian's gaze drifted to the doorway where the boy had disappeared, then to the black glass of the winter night. "Then I'll build a better fire." He picked up his phone, thumb hovering over the contacts. Tyro for the feeds, Dr. Alessi for the examination, and one more number, old, rarely used, the badge that couldn't be bought. He dialed. When the line clicked, Lucian spoke without greeting. "I need a quiet look at Red Crane 3, he said. "Off the books. If your hands shake, don't call me back." He ended the call and straightened his jacket. Outside, the harbor lights blinked like patient eyes. Inside, the Devil's Dinner resumed with muted forks and a new, careful silence, because everyone understood what the boy had done. He had walked a plea into a palace of wolves and made the biggest one remember what teeth were for. Not just to bite, but to guard. And somewhere between the chandeliers and the suite door, Lucien Vardano admitted what he had already decided. The Empire would bend around this child, and the hunt for Eric Vance would not stop at the edge of any badge. Before we continue, take a moment to subscribe and like this video. It helps more people discover stories like this one. And tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Now, take a deep breath, because what happens next will change everything. Cairo arrived just after dawn, his laptop slung under one arm, a takeout espresso in the other. He didn't speak until the door sealed behind him. The Don's office wasn't the kind of room that welcomed morning conversation. It was built like a confession booth, half shadow, half light, and nothing forgiven. Lucian stood by the window, sleeves rolled, a cigarette burning out untouched between his fingers. On the couch nearby, Noah slept curled under a wool blanket, one small hand clutching a folded napkin like a lifeline. "Tell me," Lucian said without turning. Cairo set the laptop on the desk and exhaled through his teeth. "You sure you want this over breakfast?" "Start with the accounts." The keyboard clattered, filling the silence. Rows of numbers reflected across Cairo's glasses, an ocean of digits rising and falling in perfect deceit. "Eric Vance built a spider web," Cairo muttered. 9 shell companies, maybe more. Each one owns the next. Money cycles through Hong Kong, Belize, the Caymans, then lands right back here under Vardano Logistics. Lucian finally turned, eyes narrowing. "Under my name?" "Under your banner," Cairo said carefully. "The paperwork looks clean. If the feds ever trace it, they'll think you signed the checks yourself." Lucien's cigarette hissed as he crushed it in the ashtray. "And what's he buying with my reputation?" Cairo clicked another key. The room's screens flickered to life, rows of shipping manifests filling the glass walls. "Containers," he said. "Lots of them. But the cargo codes don't match the invoices. Shipments labeled as construction materials, textiles, or used machinery. But the weights are off. Way off." Lucian frowned. "Weights?" "An empty steel crate weighs about 2 tons, Cairo said. "Some of these are listed at 4, some at 5. Lucian's jaw tightened. "What's inside them?" Cairo hesitated. "People," he said. "Women. Children. Trafficking, using your ships as cover." The words hung there like smoke. Lucian's pulse thudded once, twice, slow and deliberate. He walked to the desk and stared at the numbers, each one a ghost in disguise. "How long?" "At least 3 years, Cairo said. "Long enough to make millions, maybe longer." Lucian's reflection in the glass looked older suddenly, harder. He had killed men for greed, for betrayal, for lies told in the name of power. But this wasn't about empire. This was rot. This was filth dressed in suits. "Pull everything," he ordered. "Every document, every wire transfer, every crate that ever touched his name." "That's already in motion," Cairo said. "But boss, there's something else." Lucien turned, voice flat. "Say it." Zero tapped another key. A digital ledger opened, scrolling fast. He's not just stealing from you. He's using your network's police contacts to keep his shipments invisible. 2 detectives, 1 customs officer, and a port supervisor, all paid off. One of them works for us. Lucian said nothing. The silence grew heavier, a blade waiting for a handle. His empire, built on rules and fear, now rotted from the inside. "Who's the inside man?" Lucian asked. Kiro hesitated. "It's looking like Franco." Lucien's eyes lifted slowly, and for a moment the air itself recoiled. "You're sure?" "Not yet. But the digital signature on one of the clearances, Franco's old encryption key, either he's careless or complicit." Lucian stepped away from the window. His hand brushed the edge of the leather couch where Noah slept, soft breathing steady, lips parted. The child looked fragile under all that stillness, like one wrong sound might shatter him. He'd seen boys like that before, himself once, in another lifetime. The same kind of small, shaking body that learned to stay quiet while the world screamed. Lucien's voice dropped. "This doesn't leave this room." Zero nodded, his fingers freezing mid-type. "Understood." "Good. Now trace every shipment back to the cranes. I want dates, names, and the dock foreman who signed off. No gaps." Cyro worked fast, the screens cycling through lines of data. "You'll want to see this," he said after a moment. "Warehouse footage from last month. Red Crane 3 timestamp matches one of Vance's manifests." The video played in silence. Floodlights cutting through fog, cranes moving like steel beasts. Then, shadows, figures unloading crates. One container door opened slightly, revealing a flash of movement inside. Small hands, pale against the dark. Lucien's chest tightened. "Turn it off." Zero did. Lucian walked to the liquor cabinet, poured whiskey into a glass, and didn't drink it. His reflection trembled in the amber liquid. "He used my ships to bury children," he said quietly. "My name moved those crates." Kiro didn't answer. Lucien's eyes lifted to the couch again. The boy stirred, murmuring something in sleep. A faint smile flickered across his bruised face, the first sign of peace Lucien had seen. He set the glass down untouched. "Erase the video." "Erase it?" "For now," Lucien said, "until I decide how to use it." Kiro shut the laptop slowly. "What do you want me to do about Vance?" Lucian stared at the window, where dawn painted the city gold. "Find him," he said. "Quietly. No police, no noise. If Franco's involved, he'll warn him." Cyro nodded. "I'll start with his accountant trail." Lucien's gaze drifted back to Noah, the napkin still balled in his hand like a flag of surrender. He thought of all the things he'd justified in his life. Blood spilled for balance sheets, silence bought with fear. But this was different. This was not power. It was sickness masquerading as order. He leaned against the desk, voice barely above a whisper. "You ever think, Cyro, that mercy is just cowardice with a clean name?" Cairo looked up. "No, boss. I think it's the only thing that keeps men like us from becoming the things we kill." Lucian let the words hang there before answering. "Then maybe I waited too long to remember it." He dismissed Cairo with a nod. When the door shut behind him, the office fell into a strange stillness. Outside, the first horns of morning traffic echoed faintly through the city. Lucian crossed to the couch, pulled the blanket higher over Noah's shoulders, and studied the boy's small, clenched hand. The napkin was still there, creased, stained, but held tight. He reached for it carefully, unfolding it just enough to see what was inside. 2 crumbs, a smear of chocolate, the remnants of the pie from last night. Nothing, really, but the boy had kept it, maybe because it was the first thing given freely in a long time. Lucian stood for a moment, then turned off the lights. That night, the docks slept uneasily. Rain slid down rusted chains and old shipping containers. Lucian walked alone through the rows of steel, his footsteps echoing against the hollow ground. The air reeked of oil and salt and something older. Memory. He reached Warehouse 9, where Vance's manifests said nothing ever happened. The lock was already broken. Inside, the dark stretched wide and heavy. Water dripped from pipes above, steady as a metronome. He moved by instinct, flashlight sweeping across crates, the beams catching faint scratches, marks that looked like fingernails dragged across steel. He stopped. On the floor, beneath the rust and grime, something glimmered, a flash of silver. He crouched and lifted it gently. A pendant. The chain was broken, one wing bent. On its back, an engraving. Ilara. He held it in his palm for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was a whisper to the dark. "You tried to stop him," he said. "You didn't fail. You just ran out of time." He slipped the pendant into his coat pocket and straightened, his face carved in shadow. By the time he stepped back into the rain, the decision was made. Eric Vance's world would burn, quietly, completely, and without forgiveness. Noah woke to light. Too much of it. The curtains in the unfamiliar room glowed gold, and the ceiling above him seemed higher than the sky. He blinked, throat dry, and for a moment the silence scared him more than any shouting ever had. There were no footsteps, no slamming doors, no creaking floorboards signaling his father's temper. Only the distant echo of running water and the low hum of something mechanical. Maybe the air conditioning, maybe safety. He sat up slowly. His shirt was clean. The bruises on his arms looked softer somehow, no longer blooming but fading. The bed felt wrong. Too soft, too large. And for a fleeting moment he wondered if he'd died. But then the door opened. A tall man in a dark suit stepped in first, scanning the room before speaking. "You're awake." His tone wasn't kind, but it wasn't cruel either. Behind him came another man, familiar, sharper, dressed in a crisp black vest. Lucien Vardano. The boy stiffened. Lucien stopped a few feet away. "You slept 12 hours, he said simply. "Ciro told me you talked in your sleep." "I didn't mean to," Noah murmured, eyes darting away. Lucian poured water from a glass carafe into a tumbler and handed it to him. Noah hesitated, then took it with both hands. His fingers trembled. "Drink," Lucien said. "No one's going to hurt you here." Noah sipped slowly. "Where am I?" "My house," Lucien replied. "You'll stay until it's safe." The boy's eyes widened at the room, the marble floors, the chandelier shaped like falling stars, the velvet drapes that looked heavier than his entire body. "It's too big," he whispered. Lucien allowed a faint smile. "You get used to it." Noah didn't answer. His gaze drifted toward the window, where men in suits stood in the courtyard, carrying rifles like ordinary accessories. "Those men?" he said quietly. "Are they police?" "No," Lucien replied. "They're better." Noah swallowed hard. "Mom said men with guns aren't ever better." That made Lucien pause. He sat on the edge of the desk near the bed, studying the boy. "Tell me about her," he said. The question seemed to tug something loose. Noah's voice broke before it began. "She tried to go to the police. After she found out what Dad was doing, she said he was hurting people, not helping them. He told her if she didn't stop asking questions, he'd make her disappear." Lucian's expression didn't change, but the air around him did. It thickened. And did he? The boy nodded. 3 days later, she was gone. He said she left us because she didn't love me anymore. Lucian's jaw tightened. He said that to you? Yeah. Noah's voice cracked. I waited by the window for her every night after that. I thought maybe she just got lost. Lucian looked down, letting silence settle between them. A man could justify almost anything: betrayal, murder, power, but not this. Not breaking a child with a lie that sharp. He rose, buttoning his jacket. Zero, he called. The tech man appeared instantly in the doorway. Find out where Alara Vance was last seen, Lucian ordered. Everything. Neighbors, hospital records, police logs, toll cameras. She didn't just vanish. Zero nodded once. On it. When the door closed again, Lucian turned back to Noah. What else do you remember? She had a silver necklace, Noah said softly. An angel with wings. She said it would keep her safe. Lucian reached into his pocket and closed his fingers around the broken pendant he'd found at the warehouse. For a moment, he considered showing it to the boy. Then didn't. The time wasn't right. Instead, he said, Your mother sounds brave. She was, Noah whispered. She said truth was the only thing stronger than fear. Lucian almost smiled again, though it came out sadder this time. Then she and I would have argued a lot. Downstairs, the house was alive with movement. Men passed through hallways with folders and phones. Somewhere in the distance, a piano played faintly, an old tune Lucien's mother once loved, though he hadn't heard it in years. Franco Delaro stood by the dining room window, hands clasped behind his back. His eyes followed Lucian as he entered. The kids awake? Lucian nodded. Good, Franco said dryly. Now maybe we can end this circus. Every man in the city knows he's here. If the cops don't come first, our rivals will. They'll think we're keeping leverage, or a witness. Lucian poured himself a coffee, black as tar. Let them think what they like. Franco turned to face him fully. You're playing with fire, boss. Harboring a missing kid whose father's a criminal accountant tied to your books? You're asking for heat. Lucian stirred the cup once, the spoon clinking softly. I'm already on fire, Franco. I just don't smell the smoke anymore. That's not strategy, Franco said. That's sentiment. And sentiment gets men killed. Lucian's gaze lifted, sharp and calm. Maybe it gets them remembered. Franco frowned. You're letting a child cloud your judgment. Lucian set the cup down. Then maybe my judgment needed clouding. For a moment, Franco didn't move. The old loyalty in his eyes wavered, replaced by something colder, smaller. You've changed, he said quietly. Lucian leaned closer. I'm changing back. When Franco left, Lucien returned to his office, the echo of boots on marble following him like ghosts. He sat behind his desk, the broken pendant lying before him like evidence of something sacred. Kiro called an hour later. Boss, I found something, he said over the line. Alara filed a missing person report, not for herself, for a woman named Rosa Cavani. Same address as the Vance residence, 2 months before she vanished. Lucian frowned. A friend? Possibly. But the report was withdrawn 3 days later. The officer who signed off was on Vance's payroll. Lucian exhaled slowly. Then we find Rosa. He hung up and stood at the window, watching the courtyard below. Noah had come outside, holding a mug of hot chocolate one of the guards must have given him. The boy looked small against the vastness of the mansion, a ghost in daylight, but alive. Lucian studied him quietly. He had built his empire on silence, on numbers that lied and people who obeyed. But this boy, this fragile spark, was doing what bullets and enemies never could. He was making Lucian feel the weight of his own humanity again. Behind him, The grandfather clock ticked. The air smelled faintly of rain. And in that fragile moment, Lucian realized something dangerous. Mercy changes the balance of power faster than fear ever could. He didn't know yet that his mercy had already planted the first crack, the betrayal growing just out of sight, waiting to bloom in blood. Rain came hard that night, drumming against the windows of Lucian's office like an accusation. The city below glimmered in the downpour, restless, shifting, dangerous. His men had been at it for days, combing through accounts, files, warehouses, and backroom whispers. Every thread they pulled led to the same filthy knot. Eric Vance. Cairo's voice crackled through the speakerphone. "Boss, you're not going to like this. Vance has been selling your name." Lucian turned from the window. "Explain." "He's been contacting foreign buyers, Ukrainians, Albanians, even a few from Lagos, promising protection under the Vardano crest. Says no one touches a shipment marked with your seal. He's been using forged credentials, documents with your signature." Lucian's face didn't move, but his knuckles whitened around the glass he held. "He's trading ghosts," he said quietly. "Worse," Ciro continued. "He's selling people, not goods. And every buyer thinks they're paying you for protection. When they don't get it, they come looking. Words spreading that you're either blind or complicit." The glass shattered in his hand. Whiskey ran down his wrist, dark as blood. "Where's he getting the seals?" "Someone on the inside," Ciro said. "But it's tight. Could be one of the old guard. Could be—" He hesitated. "Say it." "Could be Franco." Lucien didn't answer. The silence was answer enough. He'd built his empire on loyalty, on blood oaths whispered in candlelight. The idea that one of those oaths had been sold for money sickened him more than betrayal itself. "Set up a meet," Lucian said finally. "One of Vance's buyers." The loudest one. Cairo hesitated. "Boss, it could be a setup." "Then let him try." By the next evening, the meet was arranged at an abandoned textile factory outside the city. Lucian arrived with two men, Vico and Armand, soldiers who'd been with him since his rise. The air inside the warehouse was damp and metallic, smelling of rust and deception. The buyer was a man called Dmitry Koval. Thick hands, thinner patience, eyes like broken glass. "Don Vardano," he said with a mocking smile. "I didn't think you'd come in person." Lucian stayed silent. He wanted the man to talk. "You know," Dmitry went on, "your accountant, Vance, he's a clever one. Said your blessing costs 5%. I paid 10, just to be sure. Imagine my surprise when your men shot at my ship anyway." Lucien's expression didn't change. "You were moving cargo through my docks without permission." "That earns bullets, not apologies." Dmitry's grin faltered. "Then maybe I was lied to." "Maybe you were," Lucian said, "but the lie started with you paying a thief." The man's hand slipped into his coat, too smooth, too practiced. Lucien's eyes narrowed. "Don't." But it was too late. Dmitry's gun cleared the coat, a flash of steel in the dim light. The sound split the air. 2 shots, one echoing. Vico lunged between them. The first bullet hit Vico square in the chest. The second never left the chamber. Lucian's own pistol barked once, and Dmitry crumpled backward, eyes glassy with disbelief. "Vico," Lucian said sharply, dropping beside his man. The soldier's breathing was shallow, red blooming across his shirt. "Stay with me." "Boss." Vico's voice was barely a whisper. It was a setup. They knew. They knew you'd come yourself. Lucian pressed a hand to the wound, but he knew the truth. Vico was already slipping. The man had been with him for 15 years. No one had ever called him brother, but he was one. When Vico's eyes went still, Lucien's jaw locked. He stood slowly, blood staining his cuffs. "Burn this place," he said to Armand. "Leave nothing but ash." By the time he stepped outside, rain had turned to fog. The city lights were faint and cold on the horizon. He felt it then, the pull in his gut, the certainty that someone had fed Eric the information. Franco's warnings echoed in his mind, disguised as loyalty. Back at the mansion, Lucian's temper broke the quiet. Orders snapped through the corridors like gunfire. "Lock down every route, every warehouse, every bank line," he barked. "No one moves, no one trades, no one breathes until I say. Every Vardano ally reports in tonight." Ciro hesitated. "What about Eric and Franco?" Lucien looked at him, eyes hollow. "Everyone," he said, "except them." The order hung heavy, unspoken but clear. Eric was gone. Franco was being watched. Hours later, the mansion was a storm of whispers and running boots. Noah sat on the stairs, knees drawn to his chest, watching men rush by with files and guns. He caught fragments, the docks, the accountant, the Don's fury. Then one guard, trying to be quiet, muttered to another, "Word is, Eric Vance's time's running out." The boss won't let him walk away breathing. The boy froze. He waited until the hall cleared, then crept toward Lucien's office. The door was open just enough for him to see the Don standing alone, sleeves rolled, blood still faintly visible on his cuffs. "Mr. Lucien?" Noah's voice was small. Lucien turned. The anger drained from his face instantly. "You should be in bed." "I heard them," Noah whispered. "They said you're going to kill my dad." Lucien exhaled slowly. Noah dash. "He's a monster," the boy said quickly, tears gathering. "He hurt Mom. He hurt me. But he's still my dad. If you kill him, then I won't have anybody left." Lucien studied him, this trembling, brave little ghost of a boy, and saw too much of himself in that fear. The helplessness, the ache for someone who didn't deserve to be loved but was loved anyway. He knelt so they were eye to eye. "You don't have to hate him," Lucien said quietly. "You just have to survive him." Noah's lip quivered. "But how?" "By living in a world where he can't hurt you again," Lucien said. "And I'll make sure of that." The boy nodded weakly, though the words didn't comfort him. He turned and walked back toward the stairs, leaving Lucien in the dim glow of his office. The rain outside had stopped, but the air still smelled of iron and smoke. Somewhere beyond the city's edge, Eric Vance was running out of places to hide. And inside the mansion, unseen by the dawn, Franco watched from the shadows, his eyes calm, his mind already deciding which side of the fire to stand on when it finally burned through them all. The storm that had broken over the city had passed, but inside the Vardano mansion, thunder still lived in Lucien's veins. Kiro's report sat open on the desk, lines of code, transaction logs, and encryption signatures glimmering on the screen like scars. The evidence was clear now. The one betrayal he'd refused to see had been under his nose the entire time. Franco de Laro, his oldest ally, his right hand, the man who had once carried Lucien's wounded body out of a gunfight in Naples and sworn an oath to never leave his side. Lucien leaned back in his chair, staring at the name that burned across the screen. Franco's code had been traced to the same offshore accounts funneling Eric Vance's blood money. Dates, passwords, digital fingerprints. Proof that his consigliere hadn't just looked away. He'd helped build the lie. Kiro's voice was quiet through the intercom. "You were right, boss. It's him. He moved over 4 million through the shell companies, kept 1.5 for himself. The rest went to Eric." Lucien didn't move. "And the boy's mother?" Ciro hesitated. "Franco's name shows up there too. He signed off on the shipment logs the week she vanished. The silence that followed felt like gravity itself, pulling everything inward, crushing, inevitable." Lucien stood, adjusted his cufflinks, and straightened his tie. "Tell the kitchen to set dinner for 2, the private hall." "Boss?" Ciro's voice softened. "Are you sure?" Lucien's tone was ice. "I'm done being sure. Now I'll just be certain." By nightfall, the dining hall glowed like a cathedral, golden chandeliers reflected in the long, polished table. Only 2 places were set, one at the head, one opposite. The wine breathed between them, dark and waiting. Franco arrived right on time, his steps confident, his face unreadable. "You wanted a quiet dinner," he said, pulling out the chair opposite Lucien. "Haven't done that since Rome." Lucien poured him a glass of wine. "Seemed like the right night to remember old times." Franco raised the glass but didn't drink. "Something tells me this isn't nostalgia." Lucien studied him. "You remember what you told me when we built this family?" Franco's smile was thin. "That loyalty keeps the wolves fed." "And betrayal feeds the graveyard," Lucien said evenly. For a heartbeat, neither man moved. Then Franco sighed, leaning back, eyes glinting in the low light. "You found the transfers." Lucien didn't answer. "I should have known," Franco continued. "Ciro's too damn good with numbers. What did he show you? Offshore routes? Wire trails? The part where I saved this family from falling apart?" Lucien's voice stayed level. "You call selling my name to filth saving the family?" Franco's composure cracked, a sneer flashing beneath the surface. "You stopped being the man who built this family, Lucien. You got weak. You started caring about rules, about mercy, about that kid." Lucien's eyes sharpened. "Noah?" Franco laughed bitterly. "That boy walks in here, and suddenly you care about right and wrong. About justice. You've gone soft, boss. You used to make the city kneel. Now you let a child decide who lives or dies." Lucien's gaze lowered to his wine glass. The reflection there, red, quiet, deceptive, looked almost human. "That boy reminded me I once had a soul," he said. "Something you lost a long time ago." Franco leaned forward, voice rising. "A soul doesn't keep you alive in this world. Fear does. And right now, everyone fears you less because of that kid. You think mercy wins wars? It gets you killed. Eric offered me a deal. Money, power, control of the docks. You'd have done the same once. But now? You've turned into a priest with a gun." Lucien stood slowly. "And you've turned into the reason I still need one." Franco's hand went for his pistol, too late. Lucien's shot came first. Quiet, precise, final. The bullet caught Franco mid-motion. The glass in his hand fell, shattering across the table. He slumped forward, breath leaving him in a single, surprised sound. Red spread across the white linen, creeping toward the candlelight. Lucien lowered the gun, his expression unreadable. For a long time, he just stood there, watching the blood travel between the table's carvings, rivers finding their path. Then he walked around, knelt beside Franco and whispered, "You saved me once. This is me returning the favor." Franco's lips twitched, maybe a smirk, maybe a memory. Then his head fell sideways, and it was done. The door opened. Cairo appeared, eyes flicking from the body to Lucien. "Boss." Lucien didn't look up. "Clean it." Ciro hesitated. "The others will ask." "Tell them the truth," Lucien said quietly. "He chose the wrong side." When Cairo left, Lucien sat back down at the head of the table. The candle beside him trembled, wax dripping onto the linen like tears. He poured another glass of wine, but his hand shook slightly as he lifted it. Outside, the rain began again, steady, unending. Somewhere in the mansion, Noah laughed faintly, a sound so small it barely reached through the marble walls. Lucien closed his eyes. The boy's voice was the only thing that didn't sound like ghosts anymore. But even that, he knew, would change once Noah learned what kind of man had saved him. He opened his eyes, and in them there was nothing soft left. The family had drawn first blood. There would be no more hesitation, no more mercy. Eric Vance had built his empire on betrayal, and now Lucian would bury it in fire. He rose, placed the gun on the table beside the untouched glass, and looked toward the darkened hall. "War it is," he murmured. The chandeliers flickered, the storm deepened, and in the echoing halls of the Vardano estate, another ghost was born, one wearing the name Franco de Laro, carved forever into marble and regret. The docks burned like a funeral pyre. Black smoke rose into the night sky, twisting with sparks that looked almost beautiful from a distance, until you saw the bodies. Two of Lucian's men lay motionless near the shattered remains of a truck, their silhouettes backlit by fire. Another, barely alive, crawled toward the water, his cries muffled by the roar of the inferno. It had been a trap. Kiro's voice crackled through the radio. "We lost them, boss." Eric's crew planted the explosives under the shipment crates. Remote detonation. He wanted you to see it. Lucian stood on the balcony of his mansion, the smoke visible even from there, a black column rising over the harbor like a threat carved into the skyline. His jaw tightened. "He sent a message," he said. "Send one back." "Already tracking his signal," Cyro replied. "He's moving between warehouses on Pier 19, but there's interference, jammers. He's baiting you, Lucian. You know that." Lucian's hand tightened around the railing. "Good," he said. "Let him." Within the hour, the Vardano convoy rolled through the rain-slicked streets. Headlights cut through the fog, reflecting off the wet asphalt like searchlights over graves. Lucian sat in the back seat, silent, while the city passed like a slow confession. Across from him, Noah stared out the window. His small hands gripped the hem of his coat, knuckles white. "You shouldn't come," Ciro had warned earlier. "He's the bait, boss. Don't bring the hook with you." But Lucian had refused to leave the boy behind. "He won't risk killing his own son," he'd said. Now, as thunder rolled across the bay, even he wasn't sure if he believed that anymore. Noah broke the silence. "You're going to find him, aren't you?" Lucian looked up. "Yes." "And kill him?" Lucien's voice softened. "I'll stop him." "That's not the same." Lucian didn't answer. Outside, the rain began again. Cold, relentless, cleansing nothing. When they reached the docks, the air was thick with smoke and salt. Steel containers loomed like sleeping giants, their sides streaked with rust. The smell of burnt oil clung to everything. Lucian stepped out, his coat flaring behind him. The men followed, weapons drawn. "Keep the perimeter tight," Lucian ordered. "Ciro, eyes on the east crane. He'll expect us from the main route." Cairo nodded, scanning the shadows through his scope. "Movement, south warehouse, single heat signature." Lucien's gaze flicked toward the building, the same one where he'd found Ilara's pendant. He felt it then, like a whisper from the dead. It ends where it began. He motioned for Noah to stay close and walked toward the warehouse. Each step echoed on the wet concrete, each breath clouded in the cold air. The door creaked open. Inside, rain leaked through the broken roof, hitting the floor in steady rhythm. The space was dark except for the occasional flash of lightning slicing through the windows. The storm outside became the orchestra, thunder, steel, and vengeance. And then he saw him. Eric Vance stood near the center of the room, half in shadow, half illuminated by a hanging light swaying from its chain. His suit was damp, hair plastered to his forehead, gun steady in his hand. And with his other arm, he held Noah by the collar. The boy's face was pale, eyes wide with terror. "Let him go," Lucian said. voice low but steady. Eric smiled, that same accountant's smile, cold and practiced. "He's my son, Lucian. You can't take him from me." "You already did that yourself," Lucian replied. The gun pressed harder against Noah's temple. "You think you're a savior? You're just another devil who learned to smile. Everything you have, everything you built, I did it for you. The ledgers, the offshore routes, the silence that kept your empire clean. You think you can pretend your hands aren't soaked in the same filth?" Lucian took a step forward. "Difference is, I remember whose blood it is." Eric's laugh was harsh and broken. "You want justice, Don Vardano? You don't even know what that word means." Lightning flared through the broken windows, painting everything in white fire. For a moment, Lucian saw the monster beneath the man, the veins bulging, the desperation, the madness. "Noah," Lucian said softly, "close your eyes." The boy obeyed. Then chaos erupted. Gunfire shattered the silence, echoing like thunder inside a church. Eric fired first, bullets tearing through crates and steel. Lucien dove behind a column, returning fire with controlled precision. Sparks rained down from the ceiling where bullets struck pipes. Noah screamed, stumbling to the ground as Eric's grip slipped. Lucian saw the moment, the split-second window, and moved. Eric lunged for the boy, dragging him upright, pressing the gun back to his head. "You shoot and he dies," he roared. Lucian straightened slowly, hands raised. "You won't pull that trigger." "Try me!" Eric shouted, veins standing out on his neck. Lucian's voice dropped to a whisper. "You had the chance to be a father. You chose to be a coward instead." The next moment blurred, Noah twisting, elbowing Eric in the ribs, the gun jerking upward, lightning flashing outside. Lucien fired once. The sound was deafening. Eric staggered backward, his pistol clattering to the floor. He fell against a steel crate, clutching his shoulder, crimson spilling through his fingers. The fury in his eyes turned to disbelief, then pain. Lucian approached slowly, weapon still raised. The rain poured harder now, streaming through the holes in the roof, washing blood into the cracks of the floor. "You'll live," Lucian said, voice cold as the storm, "and you'll answer for every name you buried." Eric spat blood, laughter twisted and wet. "You think you're any better than me?" Lucian's gaze didn't waver. "No, but I'm not running anymore." He turned to Noah, who stood shaking, soaked to the bone. The boy's eyes darted between them, between the man who had broken him and the one who had avenged him. "It's over," Lucian said quietly. "Let's go." Outside, Ciro and the others were already closing in, their boots splashing through puddles, weapons drawn. When they saw Eric on the ground, bleeding but alive, none asked for orders. They just looked at Lucian, waiting. "Leave him," Lucian said. "The law will find him this time." "Make sure they do." No one argued. As Lucian led Noah out into the rain, the flames from the earlier explosion still glowed faintly across the harbor. The smoke curled skyward, thick and red, reflecting the distant lights of the city. Noah stopped and looked back once. "Will he come after us again?" he asked. Lucian's hand rested gently on the boy's shoulder. "No," he said. "Not anymore." They stood there for a moment, the storm washing away the last of the fire, the thunder rolling far out to sea. For the first time in years, the docks were silent. No deals, no lies, no screams. Only the faint echo of rain, falling like penance on men who had forgotten what mercy felt like. The morning came slow, like a wound learning to close. The city was still half asleep when news reached the mansion. Eric Vance was talking. Lucian read the report in silence. Federal agents had him in custody under heavy guard, and already he was spilling everything. Names, routes, accounts, the entire web. He'd traded blood for freedom, selling the men who'd once bought his loyalty. The empire he'd built on deceit was crumbling, one confession at a time. Ciro laid the final page of the report on the desk. He's giving them everyone, boss. Even some of ours. Feds say he's trying to negotiate immunity. Lucian's expression didn't change. He won't get it. No, Ciro agreed quietly. But he'll try. The rain from the night before had turned the world outside to glass. Everything reflected. The sky, the streets, even the truth. Lucien dismissed Ciro with a nod and looked across the room to the small figure sitting by the fireplace. Noah sat cross-legged on the rug, a sketchbook in his lap, colored pencils scattered around him. He was drawing something. Wings, feathers, light. The boy's brow was furrowed in concentration, his tongue peeking slightly from the corner of his mouth. Lucian approached, the sound of his shoes soft against the marble. "You're up early." Noah didn't look up. "Couldn't sleep." "What are you drawing?" "Her," Noah said. He turned the page toward Lucien. The picture was simple but full of feeling. A woman with kind eyes and silver wings, standing in a field of stars. "That's Mom." "I think she's watching." Lucien felt something twist inside him. "You think she can see you?" "I know she can," Noah said. "I feel it when I'm not scared." Lucian sat on the edge of a nearby chair. "Your mother was brave." "She tried to stop him," Noah said softly. "I remember the night she yelled at Dad. She said people were getting hurt. He told her to shut up or he'd make her disappear. I thought it was just a fight. I didn't know he meant it." Lucian looked toward the fire. "She didn't disappear," he said. "She was silenced because she tried to do the right thing." Noah looked up, eyes bright with tears. "Then she was a hero, right?" Lucien's throat felt tight. "Yes," he said. "She was." Later that afternoon, Ciro returned with a small brown folder. "We found this in the recovered shipment logs." "It's Ilara's journal. Eric must have hidden it." Lucian opened it carefully. The pages were worn, water-stained, and written in a hand both elegant and hurried. A woman writing against time. He read in silence while Noah napped on the couch. The entries told a story more haunting than any rumor could capture. Ilara had known everything. The shipments, the forged documents, the women and children locked in crates. She'd been documenting it all, hoping to turn it over to the authorities before Eric caught her. One line, written near the end, made Lucien stop. "If anything happens to me, tell Noah his mother loved him too much to stay silent." He read it twice. Then a third time. The ink had bled slightly from water, but the words held. They felt heavier than any secret he'd ever kept. When night fell, Lucian stood on his balcony overlooking the city. The wind carried the faint scent of the sea, salt, rust, and the ashes of what had been. From here, he could see the lights stretching endlessly, the same streets he'd once ruled by fear and fire. The empire was still his, but it felt hollow now, like a monument built over bones. Behind him, the house was quiet. Noah had fallen asleep again, clutching the silver-winged drawing to his chest. The boy had started to smile in his sleep lately. Small, uncertain smiles, like the world might be soft again. Lucian looked down at his hands, the hands that had signed death orders, that had built an empire of silence, that had pulled a trigger on his best friend. He thought about Ilara's words, about the courage it took to face men like him with nothing but truth. He wondered how many mothers had died because of choices he'd made, how many children had grown up believing their monsters couldn't bleed. For the first time in years, the Dawn felt something that wasn't control. It was weight. Not the kind you hide beneath suits and wine and victory, but the kind that reminds you what it means to still be human. Ciro stepped onto the balcony quietly, holding a file. "The feds want to meet," he said. "They're offering a deal. Immunity for the family if you hand over the rest of Eric's network. Lucian didn't turn. And if I refuse? They'll come for us anyway. Lucien finally looked at him. Then let them come. We've survived worse. Cairo hesitated. Boss, you're changing the rules. Lucien's eyes went back to the skyline. No, he said. I'm remembering them. When Ciro left, Lucian stayed where he was, the night pressing against him. Far below, the streets pulsed with life, cars, laughter, the rhythm of a city that had learned to forget its own sins. He thought of Noah's small hands gripping a pencil, of Ilara's words written in desperate ink, of the ghosts that would never stop whispering. He had built his life on fear, believing it was strength, but fear had built nothing. It had only destroyed. Power had made him a king. Mercy, though. Mercy might just make him a man again. As the dawn broke over the city, light spilled across the balcony, pale and clean. Lucian watched it rise, silent and unmoving. Downstairs, the first sound of morning came. Noah's footsteps, small and steady, followed by the boy's voice calling softly for breakfast. Lucian smiled, faint and tired, but real. He turned from the skyline and went inside. The sun followed him in, washing the marble in gold. For the first time in years, the house didn't feel haunted. It felt alive. Snow fell like silence made visible. It drifted over the city's rooftops, softening the sharp edges of the world, burying the scars of streets that had seen too much. Inside the Vardano mansion, the world felt still for once. No guards shouting, no phone calls demanding blood or answers, just the faint crackle of the fireplace and the smell of coffee and butter warming the air. In the kitchen, Noah sat at the counter, feet swinging from a stool far too tall for him, his face dusted with powdered sugar. A stack of pancakes steamed in front of him, each bite disappearing with the focus of a boy who still ate like someone might take it away. Lucian sat across from him, coffee mug in hand, watching. He had grown used to the boy's silence. But lately there was laughter too. Hesitant at first, then genuine. Every sound of it felt like sunlight cracking through the armor he'd spent a lifetime building. Noah licked syrup from his fingers and glanced up. You're not eating. I don't like pancakes, Lucian said. You don't like anything, Noah replied. Deadpan. Lucian smirked behind his mug. You've been spending too much time with Cairo. The boy grinned, wide, gap-toothed, unafraid. It was strange, Lucian thought, how quickly a voice could change a house. The marble halls that once echoed with orders and gunfire now held something lighter, something alive. He set the mug down. Finish up. We have somewhere to be. Where? Lucien stood, straightening his coat. You'll see. An hour later, the car wound through the heart of the city. Snow blanketed the sidewalks, and Christmas lights blinked faintly in shop windows. Children in scarves threw snowballs on the corners, their laughter rising into the cold air like smoke. Noah pressed his face against the window. It looks different, he said. It is different, Lucian answered. When the car stopped, they stood before a newly renovated building, red brick, white trim, and tall glass doors that reflected the falling snow. Above them, a polished steel plaque read, "The Ilara Foundation." Noah read the name aloud, his voice small. Mom's name. Lucian nodded. She wanted to help people who couldn't fight back. Now she will, even if she's gone. Inside, the space was warm and filled with life. Volunteers bustled about, unpacking books and art supplies. A Christmas tree stood in the corner, draped with silver ribbons and paper angels. Children, some quiet, some curious, wandered through the hallways with counselors and teachers. Lucian watched as Noah's eyes widened. "They're like me," he said. "Yes," Lucian said softly. "Every child here lost something. But now they'll have a place to belong." Noah reached for his hand, not out of fear this time, but something else. Gratitude, maybe. Trust. Lucian let him hold it. Ciro appeared from one of the offices, his ever-present tablet tucked under his arm. "All systems up, boss. Funding's cleared, staff's in. First wave of students arrives next week." Lucian nodded. "Make sure they have what they need." Cairo smirked. "You just opened a school for orphans, Lucian. You realize half the city won't believe it's real?" "Then we'll make it real," Lucian said. He glanced down at Noah, who was staring at a framed photograph near the entrance, a portrait of Ilara Vance. Her face was calm, eyes bright, caught mid-smile. Below it, an engraved quote read, "The only thing stronger than fear is the courage to love anyway." Lucian felt something in his chest loosen. That evening, the mansion was quiet again. The snow hadn't stopped falling, blanketing the gardens until even the fountains looked like sculptures of marble and frost. Lucian sat in his study, papers scattered across the desk, legal filings, donation receipts, photographs of children who would arrive in the coming days. A knock broke the silence. "Come in," he said. Noah entered, bundled in a sweater too big for him, clutching something small in his hand. "Merry Christmas," he said shyly. Lucian looked up. "You got me something?" Noah nodded and placed a small velvet box on the desk. "It's yours now." Lucian opened it slowly. Inside, resting on a square of black velvet, was the silver angel pendant, the one he'd found at the docks, bent and tarnished, now polished and whole. He stared at it for a long time. "You fixed it?" "Ciro helped," Noah said proudly. "He said you found it near where she—" He trailed off, eyes down. Lucian closed the box gently. "It belonged to someone who believed the world could still change," he said. Noah smiled faintly. "So do you." Lucian's eyes lifted to meet his. For a moment, the weight of everything he'd done, the blood, the lies, the empire built on fear, felt lighter. "Maybe because of you," he said quietly. The boy hesitated, then stepped forward and wrapped his arms around Lucian's waist. It was awkward, hesitant, but real. Lucian froze, his body forgetting what to do with tenderness. Then, slowly, he placed a hand on the boy's back. "Thank you," Noah whispered. Lucian didn't trust his voice enough to answer. Outside, the wind had softened. Snow continued to fall, layering the city in white, covering the scars it would never fully erase. Somewhere in the distance, church bells rang, marking the morning's arrival. When Noah finally fell asleep on the couch beside the fire, Lucian stood at the window, watching the world he'd once ruled with fear. The streets were quiet, the city breathing in peace for the first time in years. The Ilara Foundation's sign gleamed faintly in the distance, a promise carved into the heart of a place that had forgotten mercy. Lucian touched the pendant in his hand, feeling its weight, its warmth, its history. For the first time, he didn't think about enemies or debts or ghosts. He thought about beginnings, about the boy who had walked into his world asking to be arrested, and had ended up saving him instead. The snow kept falling, erasing footprints, forgiving the earth. And inside that quiet mansion, for the first time in a long time, Don Lucian Vardano believed the same thing Ilara once had, that the world could still change, if someone was brave enough to try. If this story has your attention, hit that subscribe button and let us know where in the world you're watching from. Every story we tell connects the past to the present, and we'd love to have you with us for the next one.